So we've just made a basic backplane, panel, which is just, you know, the X, Y, and the width and the height. So we've changed that to like a good 50. So that looks quite nice. And then we can put some text in the center, which say something like bricks ATM, or it could be the name of your server. And if we do the X divided by, it'll be X plus width over 2, and Y plus height over 2. That'll basically position in the middle. We want it to be centered, so we can use text underscore align underscore center. This will center within the x-axis, so you now see that it's centered the middle of the text on exactly on the position. Now we can do the same for the height. And you see the height of the text is exactly on the position. So now it says bricks ATM. You can obviously change the font here to a different font, change the text here, the X, the Y, the colour, and yeah. Right, so that's what we're probably going to leave pretty tricky at. We might later on draw the amount of money the player has in the balance, however. So what we can do now is we just need to do most of the server-side stuff now. So as for the in use, we need to start a net. We're going to start some net functions that basically tell the client to open up a menu. So we'll do util add network string. This base is going to create a network string. Pretty simple. And we'll call that custom underscore ATM underscore open menu. And then what we can do inside here is we can do net.start. Then we'll send it to the on a net.start. Then we put the name of the net message. And we do net.send. Then we send it to the caller. And then we do, well, it should be fine actually. Yeah, that's probably all we need to do. But we need to make sure that the caller isn't a different entity. We need to make sure it's a player and it's valid. So we do if is valid caller. Then run the next code. We can actually tab this forward twice. Put an end there. Put another end there. Oh, I'm not good with typing today. Right, then we just do another if statement. If caller is player, then do that. Right, okay. And then that should start net message when we basically press it on the entity. So we can actually do this in the CL init. We can do net.receive. And we put the name of the net message. And then we do the function. Don't really need any arguments in the function for now. Right, and now here we can basically make it so it opens up a menu. So if we can test it, we do print here. So it will basically print here in the console on the client whenever you press E now. You hear it spams E. I just could kill myself. I've got the annoying hunger mod on, doing some testing. Right, okay. So now we can do stuff in here. What we can do is we can create a simple DERMA menu. So we'll create a global variable on the client for the DERMA menu. This we'll call it a custom ATM underscore menu equals VGI.create, and we'll just make a simple D frame. We're not going to spend ages customizing the menu because you can figure that out yourself. If you go watch their forming tutorial, there's a lot of HUD paint menu like DERMA painting in there. You can probably learn most of it from that. So we've created a D frame, doesn't need to be parented to anything. And now we've created the D frame, so now we can change it a bit. So we can make set the title to be called custom ATM, and then we can make it a pop-up so that it takes over the mouse on the screen. And now we should probably set the size and so on. So we'll set the size to be, let's say, like screen width is basically the width of the user screen, and times that by 0.25, and then the height of the user screen, and we can times that by 0.25 as well. And then as for the position, we can just use center. Right, okay, that should create right, okay, a issue actually. What we want to do is we want to make sure it, right, so if we do if not, so we do if Right, what this will basically do is it's checking if the menu is already created, then don't run this function here. So it's basically saying don't open the menu if it's already open. Because remember there where we only pressed E once, but it called it printed here loads. It's because it wouldn't. The end use function is basically carried out every time for the whole period of the time that you're holding E. So even though it may feel like you're holding it for like 1 second, you're holding it for a lot of like in-game frames. Let's now press E, open to a menu, we can drag it around. I don't want it to be draggable, so we can do set draggable. We can set that to false, and now it shouldn't be draggable. Right, okay, an issue with this is then we don't want it to return end. If custom made then we do set visible true. Else. Oh wait, well, I don't want to return straight after that actually. Right, so now if we return, right, we're doing it wrong again. We want to make sure. It shouldn't just be asking if it exists, because it's probably always going to exist. It's just not going to be valid. So we can use it is valid again, and then hopefully the menu should appear and disappear. There we go. Now it's not draggable either. So it is valid basically. I'll show you on the wiki actually. Just allows you to check if something is basically valid. So if it's a entity, it'll check if it actually exists in the world. So you use it on entity, tables, and more. So most objects basically is things that you can like affect. Yeah. Right, okay, so we've got the 3D to 2D done, says bricks ATM. We've got a little menu that pops up, but now we want to get it so. Alright, shall we do the buttons first, because then we can get it to actually display stuff. So what we could do is we could just create 2 buttons. We'll have one for withdrawing, one for depositing. Do local deposit button equals vgui.create, and then D button, and then we'll parent that to custom ATM menu. And then now we can affect the deposit button, and what we'll do is we'll just dock it to the bottom. And then we can just set its tool, let's say like, we'll just get the height of the menu times up by like 0.25, and then we can set the text, and we can set that to like deposit money. Right, and now if we do that, that should show a button. We've got a big button there. Right, so now we've got the deposit money button. If we create a new one, we call the deposit button the deposit. This is going to be withdraw button. Right, and that should be fine. Just change that to withdraw there. And then we should get 2 buttons. So we've got withdraw, deposit money. I kind of want the withdraw one to be below the deposit, to be honest. Just OCD. Right, okay, and let's add a bit of padding in between. So we'll just add if the deposit one is going to be the top one, we may as well just, right, so we'll add a dock margin. We can basically just put space around the object. So it goes left, top, right, and then bottom. So if we put 5 at the bottom, there you can see got a bit of space. Let's make the buttons a bit less actually. I don't like how tall they are, they're weird. Right, there we go. Right, and now here we'll just use this to display the current user and balance and put some nice stuff there. Right, okay, so now we need to get away for it to display an actual balance, but what we may as well do first actually is just we'll just draw some placeholder text so it'll be easy to come back to this later. So if we just do that, we dock this to the top, we'll call it, we're just going to create a basic D-pan to actually paint with what we want. We'll call this user info, dock to the top, the set tool 0.25 probably good enough. Set text, we don't need that. Right, right, that seems fine. I want it to be a D panel. If you look now, there should be a D panel there. Yeah, change the size of that actually. How about that? Should be 4.5. keep messing around with values. That will probably be quite nice. There we go. Right, okay, and now we can just paint it. So we do userinfo.paint, so basically painting the panel. Set it equal to a function of self, width, height. The self is basically this panel. Width is the width of the panel, height is the height of the panel. So that means that we can use those values to now paint it differently. So if you look now, the panel doesn't, because the paint function is empty, so you can't actually see anything. Right, so bricks ATM, we'll do this as just width over 2, so we'll base center in the middle, and height over 2. And then we'll make this say something like the player's name, and the player would be the local player, so we just do player Nick. So now if we've got that, you'll see it says the user's name, and let's do height divided by 4 actually. Let's do times 0.25, which is just divided by 4, just makes it look nice. Right, and now we can draw another value. We could just do 0. We'll do Derma default, changing the font, and then we can make it so that appears about halfway. I don't know, I kind of want a bigger font, so if you go look at some of the default fonts, we can find a nice one. So you got Derma large, about that size. I think Trebuchet 24 would be quite nice. These are all the default fonts, meaning we don't have to mess around creating our own. So if you look there, that looks quite nice, and that will just be a number value. And now what we can do is we can, obviously right now it just says 0, which doesn't look very nice. You don't want someone just loading and just seeing a bunch of zeros. Like, don't want, if they have a balance of like 100,000, you don't want to just look like that, you know, you want it to be nice and neat. So we can use a DarkRP function called DarkRP.formatMoney. Very useful function. What it'll basically do is the number inside, it will convert it to a string, which draw that simple text already does, but it will also use string.comma on it, which means that it will basically add commas in between the numbers. So every 3 numbers it will add a comma, and it will also add the money sign in front of it. It gets a money sign from the 1D that's already set in the user's DarkRP file. So there we go, see it has commas there, and it's got a nice dollar sign. It looks much nicer. And obviously we could change this to a different value later, or we can actually do it now if you want. If you do a local player, we may as well just use network integers. Not the best practice, but they're easy to get started off with, and it's much easier to explain than a more complicated method. So we'll just do get network int, the int name, so we'll call it custom underscore ATM underscore balance, and then the default will be just 0. Right, okay, so now if we open up it's just 0. Right, now we can basically just easily edit that value. So what we'll do is we're gonna go make so the player can actually deposit, but that value obviously won't save. And the way we're gonna save it is you could either use player data, but I don't really like that, so we're gonna save it to file instead. Right, okay, so what we can do is the deposit button. We can get that so that user starts. Get that so that opens a Derma string request. I think Derma string request. Right, what these basically do is it just makes a little panel like this open up on your screen and gets the user to input something. So we can get it so do clicks, basically when the player clicks on the button, set equal function, and then what we'll do, we don't want this menu being open, so we'll we'll just remove the menu when this Derma string. Oh no, don't really want to do that actually. Right, okay, so Derma string request opens up the string request. There's no point having it on separate lines. Just annoys me. Right, they can stay there actually. So console print. This is, I believe, yeah, the thing that the title of on the Derma frame. The next one's the message, and then you've got don't know what that is. I think that might be the default value. So we can set the default value to like 100 or something. Right, okay. So we can change that title to ATM deposit, and then we can just change this to like something like how much would you deposit, like that. Now if we open up that and we click deposit money, it's quite nice. It fades into like something like this, which makes it a lot easier because it, you know, makes the background stuff less distracting. And then the default value is 100. Right, okay, so now what we can do is this first function, it should explain the wiki, but that should be, right, look, so the first one, so that, yeah, the default text, then the function confirm and the function cancel. We can change the text actually if you want. Right, okay. So, this basically means that this function is for when they click the first button, this function is when they click the last button. So, what we could do is we'll actually change the value, so this is going to be the value of the first button, so we'll basically say deposit, and the second button will say cancel. So now if we click, it says deposit cancel. Right, okay, so let's get this done. Right, so this will, it's basically, we don't want anything when it cancels, so we can just do that, we can just leave it like that. And then this is the function that will have when they click confirm, and it will be text, and the arguments are just text. Right, so we want to obviously check to make sure the inputted, like, you know, a good value that's on proper number. So we could do if text, then do this. We do if text. If we do to number text, we do that, and then we do then. I think we can do is number. Yeah, we just do is number. We can basically check if it's a number. Right, okay, so what this is going to do is inside we've converted text, which is a string, to a number, and now we're going to check if that's a proper number, and then if it is, we can just send a net message. So we can do net.start, we'll have a cool name here, and then we do net.send to server. This basically sends it from the client to the server, and we do net.write int, we do to number text. Actually we need to put how many bits it is, just put 32. You can look up on the wiki more about what that actually means, but I just use 32 when the number could really be any number. Do net.start, it's best, if you're making an add-on, it's best to have your net messages similar. Don't want them all messy, then we'll put deposit, and there we go, that should now send a net message to the server if we save that. Right, so now we can do add a net.receive, so if we do that, this will basically add the net message, and we'll put all our net.receives down here. So now we can do net.receive, and then we'll put the name, and then we'll put a function, and the arguments are put to this time. The first argument is length, you really don't need to use that often, I've never used it, and then the second one is apply space that the player is sent. One thing that we do need to do is we need to add some checks to make sure that to basically prevent lag spam, which can easily be done, because when you're making an add-on you need to assume that the client can do anything, so they could basically just spam this net message and lag out the server because it would constantly run this code. So what we could do is we could check if not is valid apply. That's just generally useful to not cause any errors. Then return end, so basically don't run anything else. And then we want to get the value that they want to deposit, so we call that deposit money. And we set that equal to net.read int, so basically read the integer that we've sent, and it needs to be the same amount of bits there as we did put there. Right, okay, so now we can also check if there's not deposit money. So if not deposit money, then return end. So basically if the player is just spamming the message and not actually depositing it, trying to deposit any money. Right, okay, and then we can also check, we'll do this downwards because you want them to, like, you know, be notified when this happens. Right, okay, so now we can do it else. And so basically if deposit money is number, then do this, and then we can we'll do that now actually. Right, DarkRP notify. So this is quite useful, the official DarkRP wiki. I'll try to leave a link to this. Has all the inbuilt DarkRP functions, hooks, all the useful stuff. So this will now allow us to add a notification onto the player screen. So this is the player that notifies. The message type, I believe 0 is a hint. So it'll be like a little the icon on the notification will be like a little bulb, and then 1 is